Greetings. Good evening. Welcome to the gutter. Everyone ends up here eventually. It is only a matter of time. I remain your dutiful and anything but contrite host, Aldous. We have something a little bit different on the horizon tonight, but before we delve into the murky depths of awesome that lay ahead, let us get the pleasantries out of the way, shall we? As almost always, JP is again here to keep me both in check for ranting the entire full duration of the show, as well as to provide his exceptional insights and artfully developed taste that results in things that are designed to do nothing other than to raise my ire and possibly cause me a heart attack, such as this atrocity. I'm not sure where this begins or ends, but I'm not sure why I call you my friend, JP. But welcome. Always good to have you here, buddy.
Hello. To issue a quick and small correction from last episode, in which I think we were both wrong. Post-structuralism comes before postmodernism, and as for what comes after, we are actually still in that fractured phase where historians will have to discern what that age would actually be called.
Gotcha. Well, I think whatever that decision is, World Without End will certainly be one of the precursors that led to it. It sits in a realm all of its own. And actually, I was able to score a full set off of eBay today for $12 shipped to me.
Wow.
So yeah, it was kind of hard to pass up at that price point. But so thank you for that, JP. I appreciate it's very important to us here on the gutter that we are factually correct. So I will make sure I go back and add a footnote to the previous episode when it's uploaded on the backup channel. And speaking of the backup channel, that the link for that is down below in the description of this very episode. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to that. Eventually, I think I'm on episode 15 currently, so I'm 7 or so episodes behind. I'm going to start trimming the intros down and cleaning them up a little bit, and I'll be uploading all the past episodes there. So yeah, but before we greet the chat, I do want to introduce our fine guest this evening. And in this general comic book online scene that perpetuates the cult of personality and parasocial relationships over production and quality at times, where the salivating masses are drawn to blood sports and drama, the gladiatorial bouts of Twitter slap fights and YouTube clip shows where cries of "Are you not entertained?" are layered in mixed track upon mixed track over EFAPs of EFAPs. Our guest this evening has kept his reputation clean. Known for his work above all else, which is a rarity anymore in these parts, with the notable exception being a mullet that would have felt right at home as a backshot extra in the seminal 1980 epics of their day, Footloose and Roadhouse. The first man in this corner of the indie scene to put Kenneth Roquefort's work on a cover, the breaker of the coveted six figures crowdfund ceiling on his most recently completed and fulfilled in under a year book, Battle Brick Road, with the sequel already underway and its funding campaign on battlebrickroad.com, either showing his brilliant marketing ability or his complete lack of originality, and feet firmly planted in the world of Eric July's ism with lettering duties in addition to lettering just about every book out there for a number of years in this space, the multi-talented Metallica fan, veteran, and all-around good guy, Eric Weathers. Eric, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for that epic intro. I hope that never gets topped. That was beautiful. Thank you.
You're certainly welcome. As is customary on the gutter, the topic for this evening was suggested by you, our dearly invited guest. And while you certainly could have chosen anything under the sun, you indicated that the artwork of Dave Rapoza as a major inspiration. I'm really looking forward to diving into this. We'll get into kind of my familiarity with Dave, but before we get into that, I do want to go over and greet the chat for two reasons. One, I tend to like most of the people that show up on my show, and two, they're kind of funny. So Corey Barton made it here first, and then he left. So I don't even know if he's here anymore, but thanks, Corey. Always good to see you. Ray, great to see you, Ray. Thanks for joining us. Snuggy, great to see you, man. I'm a little concerned, though, because as I scroll down in the chat, I see this, and this has me concerned. Because why are you watching One Piece, man? We've got to talk.
Thought you were a man.
Maybe he's actually got, a piece of chicken.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, yeah, that makes more sense.
SDA is joining us. Great to see you, man. Where is everybody? Well, it's the gutter. SDA. Almost everybody seems to watch it on the replay. Steve, that Star Wars boy. It sounds way more fun the way you describe it. That's what she said. And scrolling down there a little bit more, Metallica sucks. Megadeth rules. Yeah, I tend to be more of a Megadeth and Metallica fan as well. Mainly that's because in high school when Loaded and Reloaded came out, I listened to them once, and that was all I needed. And I know there's fans. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Corey Barton, what the fuck? I'm still here. I'm sorry, man. I just assumed. I apologize. Yeah. Apparently, Snuggy is really happy to see SDA. SDA finds that funny. Snuggy admits that he has a weeb infection. I think there's cream for that.
No. Yeah, I think so.
But
it's a long process to get it out.
Yeah, for sure. Probably like a 7-day cream cycle or something.
Yeah, it's like asbestos.
There you go. I don't think there's a cream for asbestos.
I don't think he was referring to the cream.
Oh. Understood.
Mm-hmm.
Moving forward from that note, we're hitting high notes already, gentlemen. All right. So, Eric, how did you discover Dave Rapoza's work? And what was it, or is it still, that you find so intriguing about it? I've got some selections here that we can pull up as we kind of dig into this, but I'd really be curious just kind of what prompted this, because everybody kind of comes across artists in their own way, and it's always interesting hearing how.
That's a great question. I don't know if I know the answer to how I've been a fan of his for so long. I don't remember where I first saw him. I'm going to guess it was DeviantArt. Now I need to go through and look at his website again and see what piece was the one. Like his biggest, shot across the bow of the internet was his Ninja Turtle portraits, because
I shared this earlier in the week, and this is probably the one that everybody, if you know the name, you're certainly going to recognize these pieces, because they show up on the Twitter feed fairly regularly with the hashtag TMT and art, and they're fantastic. They're absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I have the four brothers hanging on the wall behind me. He did these, I think, in like 2012, if I'm not mistaken. And he was one of the first to kind of do the realistic take on whatever it was that wasn't realistic, be it Ninja Turtles or, Lion-O or, the Thundercats, things like that. He was one of the first sort of like, what would this look like if it were like realistic? And it blew up. Obviously, he made a name for himself just off of those. Huge influence for me. I mean, I'm looking at him right now on the screen. It's like, I need to go paint. I need to go practice and get better at what I do. So I found him years and years ago. And when I was first sort of looking into learning how to digital paint, and he had some tutorials, and he had talked about, he had a Twitch stream back in the day too. And I was always in the chat hanging out and listening to his advice. And it was just one of those things where I was doing Flying Fortress, and I had wrapped it up, and I wanted to move on to something else. And painting was, I don't know why I never did it before. I always just, even in art class, when everybody else was like painting and doing fun stuff, I was like, I'm just going to draw. So I was drawing comic books. My art teacher was nice about that, but it would have been cool to try other things. But he was a big influence, especially when I first started learning to paint, because he was always very open. Still is very open with his process, just telling people how he got to where he is. he's worked with every company under the sun. He does concept art, illustration, paintings. He's worked for Magic, Marvel. Name a movie studio he's probably done concept art for him. Name a game studio he's probably done concept art for him. He's done comics. He did a Destiny comic for Dark Horse. He has his own comic. It's a comedy like comic strip thing called Steve Lichman. It is absolutely hilarious. They're going to be doing book 3 soon. And little 26-year-old me wanting to learn how to paint found his tutorials, and sort of opened up a whole new world artistically. And then seeing everything that he's done, his styles vary wildly. It's great to see that as an influence, and one of the reasons why I still do kind of everything. Like, I don't just want to draw comics. I want to paint. I want to do concept art. I don't say want to do, I have done all that kind of stuff. I'd like to do a movie poster or a comic book cover for, other than, like a painted one, something fancy like that. So yeah, big influence on me artistically. His work ethic is something to behold. Yeah.
Now, for you personally, you are not professionally trained as an artist in any way. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So self-taught, some correspondence courses, the occasional art book pickup, follow these procedures, art tutorials, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I find it interesting because I see this often when I'm talking to people, and it tends to be the self-taught artists always tend to gravitate, and when they talk about the artists that they love, they also always reference other self-taught artists. And in the case of Dave is a self-taught illustrator. He hails from Boston. Yep. He's been a freelancer since around 2006. And in doing a little bit of research on him this week, I was able to catch this clip from an interview that he did about 4 years ago. And I'd like to play it real quick, just because I think it's a great introduction into who Dave is and that silky smooth voice that if the art thing never worked out, he certainly could have just been, your local NPR radio announcer, or at least a morning show guy on the AM channel.
Who are you? Who the hell are you, man?
Well, my name is Dave Rapoza. I'm from Carver, Massachusetts. I'm a freelance illustrator, comic artist. I kind of do everything. I've been freelancing for, I'd say, right around 13, 14 years or so. And in that time, I've kind of worked on everything. So I've worked for Marvel, I've worked on movies, I've worked for video games, I've done toy design, clothing stuff. I've kind of just done a little bit of everything, storyboards. I try to do as much variety as possible. I think it's because I have a little bit of OCD. I can't sit still.
And he kind of goes into a little bit further in that, but I wanted to cut it off at a certain point. But he talks about how he can't sit still. He's always got to be working on something. Which is something else that I find tends to be the case on self-taught or self-motivated artists over professionally trained artists. You tend to be the kind of people that the more you work, the more the creative energy flows through you and the more stuff you want to do, which then distracts you from the work you're doing.
Yeah, that hurts. Yeah.
But I find it really interesting because a lot of times you'll read what these artists cite as their primary inspirations, and they'll cite, again, like I said, other artists. Dave cites Andrew Loomis's and Bridgman's figure drawing books, and then simply his own still life work that he just repeatedly talks about, that he just sit there and do still life paintings over and over and over and over and over again, almost like just forced brutality of forcing the square peg in the round hole until he got to the point where he wanted to do it, which is awesome to me because that's repetitive training. That's showing that you're trying to get better and you're never satisfied with where you're at. And as you look back through his catalog, and like I said, we'll be throwing up some pieces here in a minute, you certainly see the improvement. And it's lightning. And it just gets absolutely beautiful. And we have had some people join us in the chat. We've got Paulus Arts. Hail chat. Dave Rapoza is fantastic. Absolutely. I can't disagree. Crazy Mad's joined us. Great to see you, Crazy Mad. If you haven't checked out Steve That Star Wars Boy, Arrogant Ape, and Crazy Mad Star Wars Show on Monday nights at 1 a.m. Eastern. You definitely need to do it. They are probably the only people that I will listen to talk about the Ahsoka show. We got Broken Compass Comics joining us. Great to see you, my friend James. Always a pleasure. And thank you for the kind words on the post you did earlier. I really look forward to helping out you guys more on that. That's Kill Them Dead's going to be a great campaign. And Corey Barton, but what really is a professionally trained artist, like someone that went to college or someone that's done online tutorials? In common parlance, professionally trained implies that you have gone through a professional program, the end of which has a certification document that states that you've jumped through all of their hoops and you meet their criteria. When I talk about self-trained, yes, all artists are self-trained because you're doing it yourself. However, in the case of professional versus self-trained, that means you didn't go to school for the express purpose of learning how to do art. So I hope that clears that up, Corey. And there's no harm on either, man. There's excellent professional drawers and there's excellent self-taught drawers. It tends to just be a delineation factor that's interesting for me when I'm talking to them, on when you ask them what their motivations are and what their inspirations are. You get two very stark and different answers, because I think at the end of the day, those types of people are two stark and totally different types of people. Some need the structure of that organized order and some don't. And the art that you get out of that can vary completely. And that's part of the awesome.
Absolutely.
And Ray Hallock says the blue milk goes down well. Absolutely, man. It does. It's the best Star Wars show on all of the earth. I can't disagree with that. I've seen it. So that being said, JP, I kind of shot you over some stuff this week. Did you have any thoughts you wanted to touch on before we delved into kind of looking at some of this stuff? Keeping in mind that you did this.
Yeah, I
this
mean,
morning.
my art needs no introduction, but I was hoping to get from Eric, if you wouldn't mind, a little bit more information for an artist layperson such as myself, because looking at those images, I had absolutely no frame of reference for how he works or how those TMNT ones were done. So can you just give like a little bit of a background as far as like digital painting and kind of what sets him apart?
Yeah, so those turtle pieces, I've watched probably every interview of Dave Rapoza, and I'm in his Patreon, and like I said, every stream I've watched it. If I didn't catch it live, I catch the replay. His process has changed dramatically through the years. So when he started doing digital painting, he was avoiding a felony. Well, he had a felony on his record, I should say, and it was a way for him to make money. He could draw in high school, and he thought, I can draw and make money because other people do it. And so he slaved away on an old Wacom tablet, just not the screen, not a Cintiq, just the one in front of you with a pen in front of you, and would sit and paint an apple over and over and over again, like all this, the Loomis books and all of that. He never really learned, like he knew how to draw, but when he was painting, he would do a process that wouldn't really require a lot of drawing. It was just sort of putting in blobs of color and shape and sort of sculpting the artwork as it is appearing on the page. And that's what he would do with those Ninja Turtle portraits. I remember him saying that a lot of them would be like the first handful of them, it would take him like 24 hours of work to get one done. And then as his process got better and more, he got better at, more effective at it, and that time would lessen for each one. And then, so that's sort of where that went. He put in maybe a rough sketch, but then he would build upon that sketch through laying in values underneath and colors on top of that, and then just sort of rendering over and over and rendering until it would get to a good spot, and you render and render and render some more. And it all goes back to that sitting at the desk, looking at the apple with a lamp on it, painting it and trying to make it as best as he could. and like I said, I think those Ninja Turtles were like 2012.
Yeah,
my-
it was
my-
it was 2012, 2011 to 2013. I can't get an exact date, but that's roundabout. It's that 2-year period. He had been professionally working for about 6 years.
Yeah.
And if you're curious, if you're not familiar with Dave's body of work, and you're going, well, why is he a big deal? I'm just going to read off a short list. And when I say short, this is a short list of the clients that he has done significant amounts of work for. Wizards of the Coast, MTV, Marvel, Epic Games, 20th Century Fox, Hasbro, Blizzard Entertainment, Bethesda, ID Software, Dark Horse Comics, and DC Comics. That's just a short list. It keeps on going. Similar to what we've talked about before, he back when Arvid was on and we were talking about Guy Davis, he drifts in and out. Guy was a comics guy that moved up and into the concept world. Rapoza is a little bit of a weird animal, and earlier I mentioned he mentioned he has OCD, and then I kind of followed it up by saying that he tends to get distracted easily. He goes back and forth from concept artist to production artist, from concept artist to production artist to I'm just all of a sudden going to make a comic. And he's done that multiple times. I don't know if crimsondaggers.com is still up. That's where I first heard of him. And then I didn't even know about the Steve Leachman comics actually until this week. I had no idea those existed. I was aware of his Starvale comic, and I do want to spend a brief moment on that. But before we do go into that, I think it's important. I want to highlight two things that Eric kind of talked about. Eric talked about his ability to paint and render. And his ability to paint and render gives you pieces like this beautiful Cowboy Bebop piece, or this beautiful Gundam Wing piece, or this awesome Ghost Rider piece. These are all excellent renders. But when you're talking about painting and you're talking about that's one skill set. But at the same time, this guy can also throw out this. And the line work alone on this is jaw-droppingly gorgeous.
Yeah, this is incredible. I mean, the intricacies, and again, like I said, I've watched everything he's ever done, and when he was talking about this piece, he talked about how it went into like how do you fake the detail, like in the guy's hands and the trinkets on his back and all of that. It's really hard to see on a stream like this, but there's a lot of detail in there, but it's not, and it looks intricate, but he's figured out ways to sort of make it look intricate without actually it doing it. But this piece was from, I'd say, about 3 or 4 years ago, and he's at this point in his process, he's experimenting with Clip Studio Paint and trying to find a way to make his artwork look. He's always trying to make it look traditional, and he's always wanted to. I mean, he can do. His favorite medium is watercolor, but
we're gonna get to that because I have heaps of praise to shovel upon him because he did something that I thought would never be possible.
So, but he works digitally because he's in the entertainment industry, and you got to churn stuff out. So obviously you can't wait for oils to dry and all of that. So, but in his illustration work, in his movie poster design or his magic card illustrations, he's trying to give it that authentic, real world, traditional look. And he's really done a phenomenal job with it.
Absolutely. And Paulus Arts says so much detail, and you are correct. And I fortunately I spent a little bit of time on this image, and he actually has some excellent crops on his own gallery page. So I went through and did a couple of clips of those that you can focus in and really get the detail. And there's numerous things I want to talk about here. And sometimes when I look at art, you can get lost in the details. It's his fingernail that I find the most interesting because he actually did the cuticle, and the individual joints and the taper of the joint between the first and the second joint on the finger, and you've got stress lines and then the rings are appropriately spaced on the face. It's an excellent understanding of anatomy, and it's the kind of thing that it's those details when you're an artist that I appreciate. I'm not an artist. I mean, I'm a technical drawer. I can draw schematics and basic shapes, but I'm by no means of this level. And I just really appreciate it when you see that basic understanding of anatomy and structure and attention to detail on the very fine points that don't matter. Because that doesn't matter. He could have gilded the hell out of something else and just spent no time, but he spent the time on that fingernail to make that fingernail look good. And that's what really I love about this particular piece. Moving a little bit on with this double page, it gives you an idea of the detail into the gilding. And this is an entirely secondary skill other than what I just talked about with the anatomy. This is an understanding of how to condense detail and do that nice render, but not overly do it that it completely floods the image. And his gloves are an excellent example of that. There's just enough detail, but then it flows right into the blank robe, so it doesn't get lost. It really stands out, and it becomes a focal point. And you're like, look at the gilding, and then it flows down into that arm, and it's the stark comparison between the gild and the robe. But the robe still has detail. It's still the folds of the fabric and the shadow and the weight. It's just a great understanding of the artist understanding what he's doing. It's wonderful to see. And then you take that and you compare it to something that he did like this, and it just, you can see him ramping up and understanding those layers and that structure even more when you're talking about how the form is structured, how the picture is layered, the detail that's on the bottom versus the plainness of the belly versus the detail of the face. It's excellent compositional work, and
absolutely masterful. Yeah,
you see it over and over and over again. Now
it's that balance of giving the eyes a rest, going from detail to rest to detail to rest. Like you can look at it as a whole and see the artistry of it, and then you can go into the small details, and there's always something new to see. But like his big belly area is like this area of rest, so you're not like overwhelmed with detail and don't know where to look. He's got this great way of pulling the focal point.
Absolutely.
And
greetings to Adam Miller. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. And
what's up,
the
Adam?
fact that this piece is so easily readable is absolutely insane. All of his work, and that's the thing that I find when going through Dave's stuff. And again, I wasn't familiar with a lot of this stuff because I was more familiar with Star Veil, which is I do want to spend a little bit of time on that just because I love that beautiful, beautiful experimental piece of work that he did. But and that touches on what you talked about, Eric, with the watercolor work, because you see this gorgeous detail of these two pieces, and you see this gorgeous rendering, and you see his work that he's done with the Marvel characters, whether it's Ghost Rider. I think probably more people have seen his Venom stuff, and I think you even indicated that to me earlier in the week when we were talking. But even as like this, I had to bring this up because this is just fantastic. The flesh tones and understanding the texture alone blows me away that he was able to do this on a two-dimensional image. It's fantastic. It's just gorgeous stuff, and it's time and time again. But where he really impressed me, and where I've always been a fan of his, is from the first time that I saw any of his Star Veil stuff. And I'm going to go through these relatively quickly just so I can get and show a little bit of the motion comic. But the Star Veil stuff, it's the closest. I doubt anybody's going to know who Dennis Fujitaki is. He did Delgota for Fantagraphics back in the 80s. But he has this very unique, smooth watercolored style about it. It's not quite Western. It's not quite Eastern. It's somewhere in between. And somehow, man, Rapoza is able to absolutely nail it with Star Veil. And it's soft, but there's hard lines in it, and it feels sketchy, but it's finished. And over again, it has this just great. And these are just the promo images. I'm going to get to the book in a minute. but it's just this beautiful feel to it, and it's just a little bit of east and just a little bit of west, and it's something that I certainly really appreciate, and I will present it, and I'm going to go through it fairly fast because I don't want to ruin it for you if you're not familiar with it. But this is his it's a web motion comic, and it is, when I say motion, I'll get to one of the pages, but you can kind of see just it's not quite that refinement that you caught earlier in a lot of his stuff, but you still get that level of detail, and the panel construction, the flow of the story. It's a little rough. It's like he's experimenting with how to do things, but it still works excellently. And then you get these great moments like this, which is really why it works as a motion comic. The guy's arms are energy, and so you can get that flicker effect going on. But it's something unlike anything else. I really thought this was excellent. He's got some great character designs, which doesn't surprise anybody if you've paid any attention to the art that we've shown already. You've got kind of the small diminutive figures. You've got the large bulbous head figures. You've got some blanked face figures, which is always interesting when you choose to do that as an artist, because if you're not allowing facial expressions and you're hiding behind a mask, how are you going to transmit and emote to the reader the appropriate response for the panel? It's good stuff all around. If you haven't checked it out, definitely go out and check out Starvale. It's definitely worth your time.
The great news about that is he's actually working on a new version of it. So Starvale is in the works on like fully realized comic book, not that experimental thing that he did there. And so on his live streams over the past year or so, he's been working on some pages for it. So if you have a chance to go check those out, I forget what they're called, but they're on his YouTube channel, and you can see he's drawing comics, and that's what he's working on in Starvale.
Yeah, I will make sure that I drop a link to his YouTube channel in the description at the end of after the show's over. But yeah, I wanted to greet Jeremy Ice and Fire. Thank you so much, my Saturday brother. He allows me to have the keys here on the Comic Talk channel every Friday for the Gutter, and I really appreciate it, sir. So thank you very much. Paul Arts, the video game stuff is always what catches my eye. Yeah, man, it's just fun. It's a great way to just do something a little bit different, and his execution is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really neat. And then when you, like I said, when you look at some of this stuff, I mean, it's just, that's the piece colored. It just, again, the skill level is off the charts.
Yeah.
And again, man, this is a guy that in 2005, 2006, yes, he had talent, but he was by no means just doing this in his spare time.
I mean, he may have been.
He may have been.
Yeah.
But we're pretty sure
there's no record of it, is all.
Right. I guess at this point, I thought I'd do this and pull up, just do a, for the sake of, because we can. This is from his own gallery on his site. I'm going to go through just briefly some of his concept work, and you can kind of get an idea again of just the depth, the skill, the understanding of layers, the understanding of, you know, how to weight things. And then also, if you look, and this is something I briefly wanted to touch on, and maybe Eric can expand on it for me. If you look at his face,
I dated a girl in high school who had a neck like that.
It's always bad when the softball team would make better linebackers than those that are playing on the football team. But if you look at his face, we've got some excellent detail, and you don't really see the brush strokes. But then if you go down to his boots, the top of the boot almost just seems like it's just a quick stroke, but it works. And, you know, or Eric, as an artist, like, do you find, how do you balance that? How do you understand where to place something that's just kind of crude and rough and just a smudge of color, but yet it works with the context of the image? versus doing that detailed fine? Is it just that detailed fine's drawing the eye, and you're driving that up, or is
You,
that
you nailed it right there. In any painting like that, where you want the focal point to be is where you put all the detail, and it's as if you're looking at an object in front of you. So you have a ball, or you look at your mouse, and you focus on one spot of that object, and you sort of let your eyes, while you're focusing, you kind of pay attention to what's around you, and you realize all the other stuff isn't in detail. Like right now, I'm looking at my mouse. I'm looking at a specific point on my mouse, and then the edges of the mouse, everything else is a little bit blurry in my peripheral vision. And it's exactly what you do here in a painting like this. He's wanting to draw your eye to the face. In this specific example, it's under his concept artwork. So this may have been where there was a whole litany of character designs with that pose, and he's just drawing different armor and fur sets and weapons on them. So that's why there's not as much detail, because you have to put in a whole bunch of iterations to come up with ideas to send them to the AD so you can get approval on X, Y, or Z, or so that might be why it is. So if you scroll down and look at his hand that's down by his side, you can still see the line art scribbles on it.
yeah.
It's that whole thing of as an illustration, yes, you put all the detail on the spot where you want that focal point to be. In this case, it looks like it's just getting quick iterations for concept designs, which is why the background is just sort of blocked in with shapes. It looks like it might be an ice cave of some sort, but and given the context of what he's wearing, all the furs and the heavy cloak and all of that. So, but yes, essentially that is, you're not meant to be looking at his boots. You're meant to be looking at his face. So that's where the detail goes.
Well, then compare that to this, because in this we've got all the characters are well put together. So is this a different style? Is there a different intention? Is it just
yes?
Is it just a turnaround? Yeah.
It's turnaround-ish. So this is for, I think, the Paragon game that was
this
canceled.
is for Paragon.
Yeah, okay, I see that icon there. Yeah, so this is again, it's concepts. I'm sure there are dozens or even hundreds more versions of these, but this was a process of which get the concepts on paper or on the screen, and get colors and shading in a quick way, so that if a piece gets picked for more, like, let's say I like the guy in blue, he now has a base that his AD would say, let's push this further, and he could take that base that's the guy in blue and then render it like the other paintings you've seen, and that's again one of the processes he came up with in his journeys of never being satisfied with his own process. This was something that he developed in order to have quicker work to give to a client, specifically for things like concept art, because that's an industry that just is churning out, it's blue sky, churn out ideas, give me 100 different, swords, and give me all these different jackets for this guy. So you have to sort of throw spaghetti at the wall.
Right.
That's the way to get it out quickly.
And we see more of the same here. And again, it's that same format throughout. Is there anything in particular you'd like me to highlight here, Eric, or just kind of go through them as I?
Well, this art style you're looking at right now is actually pretty interesting, because it's where I initially first started learning how to color comics, because he was doing this process and it was very easy to understand for me. And I'm still, even today, I'm not a fan of the overly rendered coloring styles. I mean, they're good, but they're not my ideal choice, where this is like flat colors and then one multiply layer of a ambient color, usually a blue, cut in to show shadows, and that's it. But it's all you need to tell the story, to give the volume, to give the shape you need to everything. You can tell what shapes these things are because of one shadow.
Right. No, and I tend to agree with you. My taste and preference tends to deviate more towards something like this, this tends to be the digital equivalent of 80s actual comic printing, in my
Mhm.
mind.
Mhm.
When you go when I open a modern comic and I see something like this, it's not what I want.
Yeah.
It's almost offensive to the medium to me. But my my preference tends to drift more towards the Silver Age and the Golden Age. So I certainly am out of touch with regards to the vast majority there. But I love this muted style. Um, the books that you'll see a lot of guys do this on, Mike Magnolia's books are always this way. It's that kind of muted style. You'll see Gideon Falls by Jeff Lemire is this way. It has that muted style. Oddly, both of those tend to sell really well. So maybe there's something to it.
It might be. There's more. I don't know what to.
It's more
I don't know how to.
it feels more alive rather than that
Yeah.
super
What?
artificial. Like, this is a beautiful piece, but it feels like a piece of art.
Mm-hmm.
These
It's more
pieces,
approachable.
right, these just feel like they're a little bit more lived in and have a little
Yeah.
bit more of an essence to them.
Kind of reminds me of Eon Flux.
Yeah, that's a good
Mm-hmm.
example for sure, man.
Yeah, it's like old animations from the 80s that we grew up on, 80s and 90s, where it's that cell animation style, and it kind of harkens back to that Mobius look too.
Yeah, I think, and maybe that's the best way is, hey man, if Mobius did it, maybe it was a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, outside of a handful of guys, Kenneth Rocafort included, I don't think there's anybody that could really, say that they've hit it. And even really, if you look at Rocafort colors on even his sketch palette,
Yep.
if you look at Groken, he's got a little bit more of a vibrant style. But I found it real interesting in kind of flipping through Groken 2 this week. I had the Incal out, and I would swear that he's almost picking the same shades right out of that for some of his brighter colors. So it's definitely, is he trying to copy him? No, I think it's a master understanding what works and why it works. And I think that's why you're seeing commonality. It's not copying, it's understanding what works.
Right.
So where does this where does Dave Raposa's where does this influence, where does this inspiration, where does this flow into Battle Brick Road? Where do we see this? Is it in the colors? Is it in the style of the characters, of the creations?
I think it can kind of be in a few different places. If I'm working, if I'm not listening to music or watching a stream, I'm watching a Dave Raposa tutorial while I'm just drawing comics. So for me, I mentioned earlier his work ethic it's insane. It's absolutely insane. I mean, he's not to say that he's constantly working, because he's a family man. He's got a wife and 2 kids, and he's able to be good at that as well.
I'm
But
sorry, Eric. I have to interrupt you.
yeah,
Snuggie, god damn it. I will boot your ass. Thank you. I'm sorry. Continue. And I'm sorry, SDA, let me know. Is this the exosuit you were talking about, or was it this one? Because I'd be happy to leave it up for you to reference. Not a problem. Sorry, Eric, continue.
yeah. So there are some design things that I've seen him do that I have in my back pocket for future Battle Brick Road stuff. This maybe something like an exosuit like this is on the horizon. You didn't hear that from me. But it's his comic stuff really isn't what is influencing me. It is his painting stuff. That's the stuff that really speaks to me and makes me want to be more artistic or more diverse in what I'm putting out, because I'm not one who, and maybe it's just from me listening to him say it over and over again, but I'm not satisfied with just doing the one thing. We're in this arena where we've got people that have been drawing comics for 30 years. I don't want to be the guy that's been drawing comics for 30 years. There's so much more that I want to do than just comics. And so much more that I have done too. I'm trickling into that space, maybe a little slower than I had anticipated, but it is seeing that he's able to do, well, basically anything. I mean, movie posters and comic covers, and like the new G.I. Joe line that just came out, he did the Serpentor artwork for it. He's magic together. I want to be able to. I have that hanging on my wall. That's Sonic the Hedgehog, actually. Yeah, again, I'm in this spot where it's like I would love to be able to spend the hours a day that he does, but I'm spending those hours, lettering and designing, and then the free time I have after that is for me to draw my own books. So there's this I guess longing. There it is right there.
Yeah,
That's the card art for the actual for the toy. Yeah, so he's been an influence for sort of outside the comics, which I'm sure has bled over in some subconscious way for sure. But I'm not looking at his artwork when I'm thinking about or even working on Battlebrick Road. There are other artistic influences I have for comics. I like to, find that influence wherever it is for whatever style I'm going for. But yeah, for me, it's just the way that he is constantly churning out work where I feel like, and I want to be able to be like, and I'm looking at Adam Miller was in the chat earlier. I don't know if he's still here, but like seeing him bust out those Iron Age icon paintings, and one of which is even Lion from Battlebrick Road. He's just cranking those suckers out, and there's a little bit of jealousy over here in the Weathers camp on somebody that's able to do that. So I know it's not effortless because I know what goes into it, but
right. But at the same time, I mean, I know in a previous life almost, because it feels that long ago. Man, you cranked out a piece for Sierra Whiskey and I, like at church on a Sunday, fully rendered, fully painted, just boom, there you go. What do you think? And it was absolutely killer. So you definitely have it in you, and I'm trying to delay here as I dig and try to find where I put that piece.
Yeah, that's the weird thing is like comics take me forever, painting doesn't, and I'm doing more. Like I want to do more, and artistically, it's like at some point I'm going to do a painted cover. I almost did one for Battlebrick Road here, but ended up pivoting. I'm always, I guess, gun shy with it, but yeah, I'm not.
Yeah. So here's let me put this on, and just so we can kind of celebrate your work. You did this in under 3 hours, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
For Savage Wilds, when Sierra Whiskey and I were really pushing that hard, and we were looking to do that. But you definitely, it's there. I mean, yes, is this piece rough? For sure, but it's there in context and form, and it really in structure. That's an excellent trading card piece. No different than what Adam's doing. Obviously, Adam's doing it more regularly, so he's a little bit faster than you, and probably the quality's a little bit higher. But you're there when you're probably not thinking about it. You know what I mean? When you're focused on it, that's the distraction.
That's where I get caught up. When I start thinking about it, I get it all in. I get in my own way. And I don't know how to not do that. It's just going to take a lot of practice. Going to take a lot of mileage, which I'm here for. I'm here to do it. It's just
right. So SDA 2 years ago,
time.
I sent Eric a copy of the absolutely gorgeous and fully painted graphic novel Doctor Strange into Shambhala, with hoping that somehow that might give him a little bit of a swift kick via the U.S. Postal Service to do that. He has yet to do that, but I hope it's coming. Personally, I mean, as biased as I am, I want him to do my book and be the first painted book that Eric Weathers ever does. If that's not the case, if any of you backed Battlebrick Road, that came with an absolutely gorgeous bookmark that had a P51 on it. Eric painted that.
Flying Fortress.
Or Flying Fortress. I'm sorry, Flying Fortress. I did it. You did it earlier on Global, and I just did it now. But it was this gorgeous bookmark with a P51 for Flying Fortress's campaign. He painted that. And if he does anything, he needs to get with Billy Tucci and the two of them need to do a World War II, just a dogfight book. It'd be absolutely fantastic with the two of them working on it, and that would be my secondary dream for that to happen. But
That would be fun.
It would be, but I don't know if it'll ever occur. But maybe you should talk to Billy about it.
There we go. I'm sharing it right now. There's a painting.
Oh, there we go. There's the.
Try to make. I can't scoot it up. We're all in the way, but
Yeah.
But yeah. And then that was. I mean, painting clicked. It just clicked. Like, this is one of my first paintings. Like, nobody says that. This is one of my first drawings. It's like, it's a house and stick figures. This is one of my first digital paintings, and my wife is always hounding me, maybe almost as much as you, Aldous, to keep painting and paint more. Maybe almost as much as you.
Well, do you ever like look at what some of the, and God forbid I'm going to say this because I don't want you to look, because then you might actually drift over that way. But I mean, there are a lot of very prolific and successful World War II aviation artists that just do really well with prints.
Not just aviation, but battles and all of that. I have a book.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean,
what's his name?
Osprey Publishing alone keeps like 7 artists I know in full business just with doing plate work for some of their books for reference. When you're talking about markings on planes for, model making and such.
Yeah. I have this Portraits of Combat hardcover book from an artist named James Dietz, and it's beautiful stuff. I mean, it's like the boys returning home with their B-25 in the mud, with the Jeeps rolling up with the new crew, and just battle scenes at Iwo Jima or Battle of Bulge. It's just phenomenal pieces.
Yeah, well, and you've got guys like Ben Pook Art that have been out there for the last 15 years doing great historical paintings and doing very well, both selling as originals and selling prints of those. Whether they're historical scenes or fictionalized characters. So there's huge markets for this, all across the board. But when you look, Rapoza is certainly at an entirely different level than all of them, and he continues to improve. And I think part of that continuous improvement is just it's this stalwart dedication that he has, where he talks about I always go back to this. And I want to reinforce this at the end, that he wanted to be an artist. And he knew that he wasn't good enough. So he practiced and he sat and he just did still lifes until he was happy.
Yeah.
And you know what? He's still doing still lifes. So what does that tell you?
Yep. It's the fundamentals, right? It's no matter what you're doing, it's, doing your drills. If you're doing a sport, you're practicing your pitching in baseball or, your golf swing or whatever. It's the same thing. And he is always, thank you, Adam. He is always hounding those fundamentals, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And if you have that down, I mean, I forget who it was. There was an artist on Twitter I follow, and the tweet was very simple. It said, "If you can paint a still life, you can paint anything." It's true, because when you know how to do that, when you know how to draw something and make it look real, then you can make stuff up and make it look real. So
there you go. It sounds so simple, but it requires a lot of effort and practice.
It is simple. It's just not easy.
That's, what? That's an excellent way to put it. Thank you for correcting me on that. That's a much better phrasing of that statement.
Yeah.
So with that being said, Battlebrick Road 2 is currently available at battlebrickroad.com. You can see Eric's evolution in his art. If you missed out on number 1, I'm sure you can get that. I highly recommend it. Eric's friend and writer on this, Zeb, he knows his story. One of the things that I absolutely despise is when you take something from the public domain and you twist it in such that it violates the spirit that it was originally meant for. James Patterson, well, they say it was James Patterson. Let's admit it was a ghostwriter. Recently did this with The Shadow in his godforsaken novel that they released. Eric has not done that here. He took Baum's work in spirit, and Zeb crafted a beautiful tale, and Eric laid over the top some awesome visuals with, I think the script was actually both of you guys, so you both have some input there. But what you guys have done is you put together a story that really, it doesn't deconstruct bomb at all. It really moves the story in a positive direction and takes a new take
Yeah.
on it. And I personally, as a huge Baum fan, I own 4 original first print editions of the Wizard of Oz books. I find that awesome. So I
Wow.
appreciate that. I know there's a lot of other people out there that appreciate that. And I know there's a ton of fans out there that really enjoyed the first one. Not just because of that awesome Roquefort cover that made it sell so well, for sure. So as
Still.
any closing thoughts either of you gentlemen might have before we wind this down tonight?
Well, I don't know. If anybody out there is hasn't checked out Dave Rapoza's work, you have to do it. DaveRapoza.com. There are thousands and thousands of illustrations on there. It seems like there's a rabbit hole you can go down, and if you want to support him, check out his Patreon. It's $5 a month, and he tells you how he does everything from beginning to end. So all of his secrets are laid bare artistically, and he's not gouging you, wanting you to do a $800 a month, mentorship. So I would definitely, he's my biggest artistic inspiration, probably ever, in terms of getting me off my butt and into the, well, I guess on my butt into the drawing chair. Yeah, do that for me. And then, I'm just going to have to tell you to go back Battle Brick Road 2 because it's the greatest independent comic probably ever made.
JP, any follow-up comments?
I mean, one of the ones that we kind of blew right by was a Castlevania piece, and in my humble opinion, I think there is no other video game in the brief history of video games that has a more storied past when it comes to original art pieces. All the way back to the very first game, you had these amazing, these amazing paintings that went along with every single game in the series, from Castlevania to Simon's Quest to Super Castlevania 4, Circle of the Moon, all these other games. So for him to make something that stands up to that legacy is, that's pretty incredible.
Oh, shoot, man. I wish you would have said something when I was scrolling past it. But yeah,
I
that's,
got it.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Man, that is gorgeous. And that's the thing. You look at the head of Medusa there. It's just the detail and the shading, and it's so subtle. It's in the background, but the level of detail, it doesn't draw you away. It's still there.
Mm-hmm.
Or the bandages on the mummy. That's just a great piece, for sure. Well, gentlemen, as always, thank you for joining us. Go check out Battle Brick Road at battlebrickroad.com. And on that note, we bid you good evening.
This is blood for blood and by the gallons. This is the old days, man, the bad days, the all or nothing days. They're back. There's no choices left.
still here? It's over. Go home. Go.